Now, the government's had a plan to review, abolish or replace all the legacy EU legislation applying in Britain by the end of this year, 2023. It's been posited as a Brexit bonfire of old EU laws, but it looks as though it isn't going to happen. For one thing, it's looked very ambitious to rewrite a few thousand laws against a tight self-imposed deadline. But anyway, the House of Lords seems ready to throw out the legislation needed to make it happen. We can talk to Anand Menon, Director of UK in a Changing Europe, the think tank. Anand, thanks for joining us. Let's start with this EU Retained Law Act, or whatever it was called, what it was aiming to do.
Well, simply put, what it was aiming to do was sunset all those EU laws that remain on the UK statute book at the end of this year. So people estimate the number to be about 4,000. We keep discovering new ones. We're not exactly certain. But all those pieces of legislation, unless ministers specifically intervene, would simply fall off the statute book at the end of this year.
Presumably in that 4,000, there are hundreds or maybe thousands which Britain is very content with, had a part in shaping, and which don't really need to change, or that the government would not want to change. Is that right? I mean, that you would basically just nod them through in a kind of with a British wrapper on.
Yeah, I mean, I think in most cases, the vast majority of cases, these are laws that the UK voted in favour of. And as you say, in many cases are laws that the UK pushed to have put on the statute book inside the European Union. But the argument here is, from Brexiters, is that this is an unnecessary bureaucratic nightmare. If we can get rid of those laws, we can start to reap the Brexit dividends of deregulation. The problem is, the workload involved, the amount of civil service time it'll take to trawl through these bits of law and figure out which we should keep and which we should get rid of. And secondly, the fact that business is slightly queasy about the fact that we might end up with some kind of legal vacuum should these laws just cease to exist.
What kind of laws are we talking about? Are these important laws, or are these laws that don't really matter? I mean, if there are such things.
Well, a mixture. I mean, I think one of the criticisms of what's being done at the moment is it's being done to an arbitrary deadline. No one, I don't think, is suggesting that there aren't EU regulations that we could usefully get rid of to improve the competitiveness of our economy. But hidden amongst those are things like, things that protect consumers when it comes to gas installations or food safety or things like that. And simply scrapping them without thought as to how to replace them is going to literally put the public at risk.
Yeah. As you look at Brexit right now, Anand, and you have studied this more than just about anybody in the United Kingdom, there's been a lot of very negative chatter about it in the last couple of months. People saying, there's buyer's remorse in Britain. The polls, I don't know, but the polls are a little bit mixed, but showing a general weariness with it and thinking it isn't really delivering benefits. Where are you on it at the moment, Anand?
Well, I'm not sure about the extent of buyer's remorse, to be honest. I mean, most of the data suggests that there are relatively few people who backed Leave who've subsequently gone on to change their minds. What's happened, I think, in the population is demographic churn. That's to say, a load of people who are either too young to vote in 2016 or didn't vote in 2016 are now part of the electorate. They're being polled, and they're overwhelmingly saying that Brexit was the wrong decision. So I think that's why we see the shift. The interesting thing, I think, is the increasing number of people we see who are now saying that Brexit has been bad for the economy. And there, I think, is a danger for the government. If in the public's mind, the current economic crisis gets linked with decisions taken over Brexit, that could be really difficult politically.
Labour clearly don't want to relitigate the whole issue. They're not taking us back in. There is in polls a fairly clear desire to have a closer relationship with the European Union, closer economic relationship, without rejoining, or without even rejoining the single markets with the free movement and all the things that come with it. What are the options? Is there something that Labour could do if they wanted to for a closer relationship that isn't, if you like, signing up to more than they'd want to bite off?
I think the real problem there is the majority of the economic impact of Brexit comes from leaving the single market. And the kinds of things that Keir Starmer and his team have suggested, a veterinary agreement, for instance, will make a difference in terms of the Northern Ireland border, but isn't going to have a massive macroeconomic impact. So the difficulty we face is that the real economic gains are to be had by taking part in the things that have real costs in terms of our autonomy, our sovereignty, our control, which makes it politically problematic.